Welcome to Annuity News Now. My guest is Eve Kaplan, who is writing for Forbes, contributing on a regular basis. She's written an interesting article on retirement spoilers. She practices with Kaplan Financial Advisors in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. Eve, it's a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, everybody always talks about the importance of retirement planning, but even, the best retirement plan, even with one in place, sometimes life doesn't really cooperate, does it?
That's correct. Sometimes there are things that we can't control, like the employment market, health status, and so on.
So for example, many baby boomers these days have decided that it's probably a good idea to spend some time at least working part-time in retirement. What consideration do you think these people should make when they're planning to work in retirement? Because as you just pointed out, it's not that easy to gain employment these days.
That's correct. I think what's going on here is that a lot of boomers are realizing belatedly that their plans to retire at 65 just don't work because they don't have enough money and they're at risk for outliving their assets. So I think on that basis, there is consideration, a new openness to working part-time in some other kind of job capacity. The problem is we don't know if those jobs can always be found. And I think the best course of action, if we can rewind the tape and if we can catch people earlier, say 10 years before retirement, is to make sure that they're on a better track so they're bulking up their assets, and they might not necessarily have to be considering at age 65 or 67 to go into the workforce in a different capacity and find something part-time.
And we're seeing defined benefit plans completely disappearing. 401ks are great, but many people just don't seem to save enough. There's a low interest rate environment. What options can you talk about that boomers have to create the extra income that they need in retirement?
Yes. Well, I think one thing is to look at the money coming in, of course, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about jobs, whether they're full-time or part-time in retirement. But the other side of the coin is how that money's being spent, and this sort of points to the benefit of financial planning. And what I'm trying to get at here is the fact that some boomers, some pre-retirees and retirees have unrealistic expectations about how much they can be spending in retirement, how much they can spend on remodeling their kitchen, buying a second home, or some things like that, for example. So I think there are all these working parts in everyone's financial plan, but some people aren't aware of them because they don't have those plans. So they're not anticipating the need to scale back on some of their goals as well.
Let's talk about Social Security planning, because Social Security is probably going to play a bigger part in most retirees' financial picture these days. And I don't think a lot of people understand how complex Social Security planning can be. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, there actually are financial planners now that are specializing in Social Security advice giving, and there are various programs that we use. I use one of the major software programs for my financial plans that I generate for clients, and they have a new module that they've added on Social Security planning. So the short answer is it's very complex. There are lots of elements to Social Security. People often are too quick to take it at age 62 without understanding the implications, or at age 66, when in fact for many people waiting until age 70 is significantly better in terms of streams of income. And there are all these other things that people can do if they're married, like one spouse can file and suspend, and then the other spouse can start taking Social Security. The Social Security hotline is great and helpful, but they're not necessarily able to dispense advice. So my best recommendation with this important asset that all of us are entitled to is to get objective advice on the best strategy, because the difference over the course of a retirement period can be a couple $100,000. It's not a trivial amount.
Hmm. You know, when you're talking to your clients, for example, when somebody, you know, comes in and they have their retirement, you know, sort of scaled out, and they're looking to put their money someplace, looking to create some sort of income. CDs aren't paying anything right now. If you still play around with the equity markets, you know, everybody's worried about 2008. There's sort of, I would guess, some investment paralysis right now. What kinds of things are you telling your clients?
Well, my clients don't really have investment paralysis.
Hmm.
That's why it's so great that they work with me. And really, I'm not touting myself. I'm saying it's great to work with a professional who alleviates that paralysis. By paralysis, I mean very typically freaking out, selling at the bottom of the market, which would have been, for example, in 2008, and then continuing to sit on cash as the market recovers back to previous levels.
Hmm.
And I meet plenty of people like that. So, you know, my clients and other clients who work with other advisors ideally have a model portfolio that's identified. And yes, it does have some of those scary things called equities, but the right amount and the right combination that will generate growth and outpace inflation. And then on the other side, you have other types of investment assets that ideally are not correlated highly with stocks. And we're talking about different types of bonds. There are many different types of bonds to invest in, and also the decision to hold bonds individually or in mutual funds, for example. So there are, and then we haven't even talked about real estate investment trusts, commodities, all sorts of
Hmm.
other types of investments. So I think that it's hard for individuals to come up with all of this on their own, and it's really hard to stay on track. And that is just one of the benefits of working with a professional, I would say, is that they keep the portfolio going, and they remove this paralysis or also this tendency to buy high and sell low.
Hmm. Once again, my guest has been Eve Kaplan. She is a financial contributor to Forbes. You can find her at Kaplan Financial Advisors in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. Great pleasure. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us, Eve.
Thank you so much, Scott.
I'm Scott Drake, and you're watching Annuity News Now.